Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the show. Let's talk some wrestling. Papa Squat right here because it's time for That Wrestling Show. Thank you for joining us this week. Well, there hasn't been a whole lot of news, believe it or not, this week, other than the fact that they're talking about The Undertaker and they've been talking about Brock Lesnar. There's only two real things I'm going to touch on this week. One of them is the Hall of Fame induction of Bruno Sammartino, because I got emails upon emails on what I think about Bruno Sammartino. And you know what? To be honest, I think it's a move in the right direction. Bruno Sammartino is one of those guys that whether you respect him, whether you hate him, whether you agree with how he feels or not, he belongs in the Hall of Fame, without a doubt. A lot of people have the wrong impression of Sammartino. A lot of people have the wrong idea of who he is. Pound for pound, round for round, he was the first major sellout that reached the fame that he did. I mean, yeah, you had, Frank Gotch and Lou Thesz and all those guys, but Sammartino was he was the Hulk Hogan of his era, and that was a 7-year era that he was world champion. And even though he didn't quite wrestle every single day or went on the road as much as the guys do now, it's still a testament, and he did bring in a lot of box office money, and he did bring in a lot of prestige and fame to pro wrestling, however you want to look at it. And he's been very outspoken, for the last 10 years when it comes to WWE. His main problem is he didn't like the Attitude Era. He didn't like the direction that WWE was going at the time. He doesn't like the swearing. He doesn't like the vulgarity. He doesn't really care for the... he doesn't like how wrestling became. He's an old school guy who wrestles and leaves. That's essentially it. And he's not real big on skits and fart humor and poop humor and all that crap that not a lot of us like either. And, to be honest, I understand everything that he says, I agree with 100%. Doesn't necessarily mean that the Attitude Era was bad, but you have to look at it from his perspective. He's an old schooler where all he knew was wrestling, and it wasn't family friendly. It totally destroyed the demographic. It was pioneered towards the 14 to 34 demographic. There was really no spot for kids. There was no entertainment value for children. It was marketed towards a more adult product. And while that, in some respect, was a good move for WWE, it was also a bad move because it did alienate a lot of the other fan base. Now, the argument is, well, the people that are paying the money are the ones that are going to pay for the merchandise. But if you're not hitting that child market, you can't really hook them at that young age and, have them be long-term. And, again, I respect his opinions. I respect what he says. And I, to be honest, was never a fan of the Attitude Era myself. Mainly because you had Bret, Shawn, and Taker all within the span of like a year. They all went heel, and I was forced to like Stone Cold Steve Austin. And not that I have a problem with Stone Cold, but I grew up with Bret. I grew up with Shawn. I grew up with Taker. Those were the three guys that, once Hogan and Savage and, all those guys were gone, those were the guys that you kind of watched. And all of a sudden, they went from being the good guys to being bad guys. And just like that. And I don't think you want to say that it was the fans that turned on them. It was the fact that that's just the direction that WWE wanted to go. And we were forced to pick up Foley and Austin and Rock to be the new heroes, and I was not on that bandwagon. I didn't really care for the Attitude Era, believe it or not, until the Radicals showed up. Once the Radicals showed up, once the Hardy Boys showed up, when Edge and Christian showed up, and we got more tag team wrestling and more women's wrestling, and I mean women's wrestling, not Miss Kitty and Bertha Faye. No, that's not women's wrestling. That's horrible. I mean actual women's wrestling, when they actually had a Divas division, an actual tag division, and it was more adult-oriented, but it was wrestling. When Kurt Angle came in, when Taz came in, Because I'm not a fan of the hardcore stuff. I'm not a fan of the skits and props and all that crap. I'm a fan of wrestling. That's how I grew up. That's how I was raised, and that's where San Martino's coming from. However, I do agree that the product did need to change. Did it need to take all those necessary steps? Absolutely not. But what does this mean for WWE now? It means that they're probably not going to be as edgy, or they're not going to be as over the top, as a lot of people like to say, because they cling to that Attitude Era. They want that Attitude Era, and the era is not going to, it's never going to live again. People have to give up the Attitude Era and move on. A lot of us have, and a lot of us will, and if you're a true wrestling fan, you'll move with the times. If you're not, you're just a fan of an era and you're gone. I mean, again, I grew up in the Hogan eras, and I'm still here. You know, again, the Attitude Era was not my favorite era, but there were things that I did like about it, and that I still are rather fond of. You know, the Kane, the Taker storyline, Triple H's rise, the Radicals, the tag division, the women's division. Those were things I tend to cling to. Everything else, you know, I could have did without. It doesn't need to be edgy. It just needs to be more realistic, and that's something that the Attitude Era, to me, it wasn't realistic. It was everyone getting hit with a chair shot, everyone getting hit with a head with a shovel or a TV or something stupid over the top, and that's the product that they needed. That's what they had to do to survive. It worked. Okay, but move on. San Martino in the Hall of Fame? Absolutely. Does he belong in there? Absolutely. Is he 100% legit? Yeah, I'll say he's legit. Does this legitimize the Hall of Fame? Absolutely. Did the Hall of Fame need him? I don't want to say they needed him, but I think it helps, you know, to be honest, because San Martino is, you know, he's a name like Brock Lesnar, like Hulk Hogan, like Ric Flair. You know, he's respected in their field. I don't mean Lesnar's respected in his field, but you say that name and things pop up. You know, he is, you know, pound for pound, one of the greatest of all time, whether you want to... I mean, he's not from my generation, and I've seen him wrestling. He's all right. I mean, compared to the stuff that they're doing now, you know, I personally think that Bret Hart could beat him. You know, if it was Bret versus San Martino, I think Bret could just beat him. Because it's a power game, can't beat a wrestling game. That's just the way I look at it. But, you know, San Martino belongs in the Hall of Fame. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He was never happy with celebrities taking over wrestling, and I agree with him on that. He wasn't happy with the vulgarity and the swearing, and I partially agree with that. It's not a family-friendly product. I partially agree with that. And, you know, I never thought I would see the day that San Martino would be in the Hall of Fame. Congrats to him. Awesome to him. And, you know, awesome. The Hall of Fame is looking fantastic this year. I mean, last year we had the Four Horsemen. This year we're getting San Martino, Bob Backlund, Mick Foley, who, you know, yeah, and Trish Stratus. This is a damn good class, and I can't wait to see it. Now, the second topic I'm going to talk about is the Royal Rumble and The Rock. Okay, I got comments and emails and suggestions and people passing back and forth how I feel. And there were a couple of ideas I had, and there were a couple of things that, you know, I wanted to wait for it to sit. I wanted for it to brew and gather my thoughts. Well, I was at the Royal Rumble Live. Everyone said, the internet said that The Rock was going to win, that Cena was going to win, is the most predictable pay-per-view of all time, and it was. But should that take away from my enjoyment? Well, if you want my honest opinion, because that's how you guys are, I'm going to give you my honest opinion about The Rock as WWE champion, not world champion, because he's not good enough to have that title. How The Rock benefits, how WWE benefits, and how the fans benefit or suffer in this whole ordeal. Well,
ladies, gentlemen, and fans young and old of that wrestling show and wrestling around the world. While we here at TWS Productions value our listeners and every subscriber, due to legal reasons that we cannot disclose, the audio portion of this clip has been removed for the safety and well-being for those under the age of 18, as per the orders of the FCC and local state and federal regulations. While we here at TWS Productions apologize for this inconvenience, as it may hinder your listening experience, we will direct you to the Beyond the Mat podcast at ScytherInkPodcast.com, where you can catch DM's unscripted and uncensored thoughts on the comics and subject matter. We do also advise viewer discretion, as the candid comments of one DM can be quite lucid toward the untrained ear. Again, we apologize for this inconvenience and bring you back to your regularly scheduled programming. We here at TWS Productions thank you for understanding, cooperation, and loyalty to That Wrestling Show.
But other than that, the Royal Rumble actually wasn't that bad. I wasn't really bothered with the fact that, Cena won. I wasn't bothered by the fact that Alberto Del Rio won. I wasn't bothered that the tag titles didn't change. And, while I'm not a big fan of The Rock, never have been, never will be, it's alright. It is what it is. I mean, it's the way Vince wants to go. Does this bury the Shield? Does this bury CM Punk? Probably. Is it going to happen? Probably. Is Punk going to be around? Well, yeah, he will be. I mean, the upside is, they are signing better indie talent. They are kind of doing like an ROH overhaul, bringing them in. And as much as I hate it, as much as I can't stand it, as much as it pisses me off that they're going to take those WrestleMania tickets, those once in a lifetime, never again WrestleMania tickets, and ripping them apart and going, well, people in New York, they're going to see that again. And the people in Florida who thought they were going to see something special, no, they're not seeing anything special. And I know there are some of you that are going, hey, why is it that you were okay about Taker and Shawn rematching, but not The Rock and Cena? Well, mainly because Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, there was a stipulation, the end of his career. That was his final match. The Rock is champion. Does it benefit WWE? Not really. Does it bring prestige to that title? Not really. Cena versus The Rock for the belt. Does it do anything with it? Not really. It's going to be a good show? Not really. But as a true wrestling fan, you got to kind of sit there and take it and bite your tongue really, really hard as much as you hate it. And, you got to do what you got to do. And as much as I don't like it, as much as I'm not a fan of it, I'm still going to watch and, hope for the best. I mean, there are a couple of things in this world that pissed me off, and, I really wasn't that offended that much by what happened at the Royal Rumble. But that's all we have time for this week. Again, there's not been a whole lot of news going on, people saying this, people saying that, but the main thing was the Royal Rumble, The Rock is champion, and Bruno Sammartino in the Hall of Fame. That's all I really wanted to touch base on. I thank everyone for tuning in, signing in, and I know there were some people trying to get into the chat room over the last few weeks. There was a major glitch in the system. I am working on it. Hopefully it will be fixed within a week or so. And those of you that, of course, go to the website at thatwrestlingshow.webs.com to check out everything. I am DM from That Wrestling Show saying, until next time, I'll see you then.